The room was filled with the kind of silence that usually precedes an execution. Julian Thorne, a man whose net worth could buy small countries, stood with a cruel smirk on his face, pointing at the marble floor. He didn't see a person. He saw a prop. He saw a waitress he could break for sport. He threw a stack of cash at her feet and said, "Dance, heavy feet, earn your keep." The crowd laughed. They expected her to cry. They expected her to run. But Olivia Vance didn't run. She unclipped her hair, stepped over the money, and unleashed a talent she had buried for 5 years. What happened in the next 3 minutes didn't just silence the billionaire, it destroyed him. This is the story of the dare that backfired. The chandeliers of the St. Regis, New York didn't sparkle. They glared. To Olivia Vance, they looked like judgmental eyes made of crystal, staring down at the ants scurrying below. And tonight, Olivia was the lowest ant in the colony. Her feet were bleeding. She knew it without looking. The cheap black flats issued by the catering agency, Prestige Staffing, had rubbed her heels raw 3 hours ago, somewhere between the appetizer round of wild mushroom tartlets and the second pour of Dom Perignon. But she couldn't stop. She couldn't grimace. She had to be a ghost. "Champagne, sir?" "Madame?" Olivia moved through the crowd at the Obsidian Gala, a charity event that cost $50,000 just to enter. The air smelled of expensive perfume, old money, and aggressive ambition. She balanced a silver tray loaded with flutes, her arms trembling slightly from the weight. "My brother needs this," she whispered to herself, a mantra she repeated every time her back spasmed. "Leo needs this." Leo, her 17-year-old brother, was currently lying in a sterile room at Mount Sinai Hospital, his lungs filling with fluid from a complication of cystic fibrosis. The experimental treatment that could save him wasn't covered by insurance. The cost was astronomical. Olivia, once destined for the stages of Paris and Moscow, was now working triple shifts, cleaning houses by day and serving the elite by night, just to keep the collection agencies from pulling the plug on his care. She adjusted her grip on the tray and turned toward the center of the ballroom. That's when she saw him. Everyone knew Julian Thorne. You couldn't live in New York without seeing his face on Forbes covers or hearing about his ruthless acquisition of tech startups. At 32, he was the CEO of Thorne Dynamics. He was strikingly handsome, sharp jawline, eyes the color of cold steel, and a mouth that looked like it hadn't smiled in a decade. He was standing near the orchestra pit, holding a tumbler of amber liquid, looking bored out of his mind. Hanging off his arm was Vanessa Sterling, the daughter of a real estate tycoon. Vanessa was wearing a red dress that cost more than Olivia would make in 5 years. She was laughing loudly, too loudly, trying to capture Julian's attention. Olivia tried to steer clear. The agency had a strict rule: do not engage with the VIPs unless spoken to. But the ballroom was crowded. A boisterous group of investment bankers stumbled backward, laughing at a joke. One of them slammed his shoulder into Olivia's back. It happened in slow motion. Olivia pitched forward. She tried to correct her balance, engaging her core, a reflex from a lifetime of training. But the heavy tray had its own momentum. She lurched toward the only open space available, directly in front of Julian Thorne. She managed to save 6 of the glasses, but one, just one, tipped over the edge. The crystal flute shattered on the floor, but not before splashing its sticky, golden contents all over the front of Julian Thorne's bespoke, midnight blue tuxedo. The music didn't stop, but the conversation in a 20-foot radius died instantly. Olivia froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She looked up, terrified, meeting Julian's gaze. He didn't yell, he didn't flinch. He just looked down at the stain on his jacket, then slowly up at her face. His eyes were devoid of empathy. They were calculating, cold, and utterly terrifying. "I am so sorry, sir," Olivia stammered, reaching for the napkin on her tray. I got bumped. I didn't mean to." She reached out to dab at the jacket, a frantic attempt to fix the unfixable. "Don't," Julian said. His voice was a low baritone that carried more weight than a scream. He caught her wrist. His grip was firm, stopping her hand inches from his chest. "Do not touch me," Vanessa gasped, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. "Oh my God, Julian, that's an Armani custom. You klutz!" She turned her glare on Olivia. "Are you drunk or just stupid?" "I'm sorry," Olivia whispered, her face burning. "I'll get a manager. I'll pay for the cleaning." Julian released her wrist as if she were contagious. He took a sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving hers. "You'll pay for the cleaning," he repeated, a dry chuckle escaping his throat. "This jacket costs $12,000. Your entire existence probably doesn't cost $12,000. The cruelty of the statement hit her harder than the collision. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She pulled her hand back, clutching the silver tray against her chest like a shield. "I will work it off," she said, her voice shaking but audible. "Work it off?" Julian stepped closer, invading her personal space. He smelled of sandalwood and intimidation. "I don't need a waitress. I have staff. What I need is to be entertained. And right now, the only entertainment you're providing is a tragic example of incompetence." He looked around the circle of wealthy onlookers who had gathered to watch the slaughter. They were smirking, waiting to see what the Wolf of Wall Street would do to the little lamb. "Julian, darling," Vanessa purred, sensing an opportunity to be cruel. "She looks like she has good balance, despite the spill. Look at the way she stands. Maybe she's good for something else." Julian's eyes narrowed. He looked at Olivia's feet, then up to her posture. Despite the uniform, despite the fear, she stood with a straight spine, her chin slightly lifted. It was the stance of someone who refused to be crushed. And that annoyed him. "You want to pay for the suit?" Julian asked softly. "Yes," Olivia said. "Fine." Julian reached into his inner pocket. He pulled out a money clip and peeled off a stack of crisp $100 bills. He didn't hand them to her. He dropped them. They fluttered to the floor, landing amidst the broken glass and champagne puddle. "There's $5,000 on the floor," Julian said, his voice ringing out clearly now, silencing the nearby tables. "Vanessa says you have balance. Prove it." Olivia looked at the money. $5,000. That was 2 weeks of Leo's medication. "What do you want me to do?" she asked quietly. Julian smirked. "The band is playing a waltz, but that's too boring. DJ." He raised his hand, signaling the booth overlooking the ballroom. The music cut out. "Put on something. Rhythmic. Something primal." He turned back to Olivia. "Dance. Right here, in the glass. If you can entertain me for 3 minutes without cutting your feet or boring me to tears, the money is yours. If you stop or if you bore me, you leave with nothing, and I ensure you never work in this city again." The ultimatum hung in the air like toxic smoke. The crowd gasped. It was barbaric. It was something out of a medieval court, a king throwing scraps to a peasant for amusement. A few people looked uncomfortable, but most were leaning in, their eyes glinting with morbid curiosity. They wanted to see if she would do it. They wanted to see how low she would go for money. Olivia stared at the bills on the floor. "Don't do it," her pride screamed. "Throw the tray at him and walk away." But then she saw Leo's face. She remembered the phone call from the doctor this morning. "Olivia, we need to schedule the surgery by Friday. If we don't have the deposit, we lose the slot. She needed 20,000 for the deposit. The 5,000 on the floor wouldn't cover it all, but it was a start. And if she could leverage this... Olivia looked up. The fear in her eyes evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve that surprised even Julian. 5,000 isn't enough, she said. The room went dead silent. Vanessa's jaw dropped. Julian raised an eyebrow, intrigued for the first time all night. "Excuse me?" "You humiliated me in front of half of Manhattan," Olivia said, her voice steady. "And you want me to dance in broken glass? My brother needs surgery. I need $20,000. You have that in your pocket right now. Make it 20, and I'll give you a show you'll never forget." Julian stared at her. He studied the defiance in her jaw, the fire in her hazel eyes. She wasn't begging. She was negotiating. He laughed. It was a dark, sharp sound. "You have guts, little waitress. I like guts." He pulled the money clip back out and emptied it. He tossed the rest of the stack onto the floor. 25,000. But for that price, I don't just want to dance. I want perfection. One mistake, one stumble, and you get 0. "Deal," Olivia said. She set the silver tray down on a nearby table. Her hands were steady now. The world narrowed down to the circle of people, the man in the blue suit, and the floor. "Julian, this is absurd," Vanessa hissed, clutching his arm. "She's going to embarrass us." "Quiet," Julian commanded. He signaled the DJ. The DJ, caught up in the tension, didn't play a pop song. He queued up a track that started with a haunting, deep cello solo that slowly built into a heavy, electronic, synthetic beat. It was Experience by Ludovico Einaudi, but a remixed high-drama version. Olivia looked at her shoes. The cheap flats were rubber-soled. They would grip too much. She couldn't turn. She bent down. "Oh, look," Vanessa laughed. "She's taking her shoes off. She's going to cut her feet to ribbons." Olivia ignored her. She slipped off the black flats. She was wearing thin black stockings. She reached up and pulled the hairnet off her bun, shaking her head. Her dark chestnut hair cascaded down her back in waves. She wasn't Olivia the waitress anymore. She closed her eyes and took a breath. In her mind, she wasn't at the St. Regis. She was back at the Juilliard School, before the car accident that killed her parents and left Leo sick. She was back in the studio where she had spent 10,000 hours bleeding for her art. She was the black swan of her cohort, the girl who was promised to the American Ballet Theatre before life destroyed her dreams. She hadn't danced in front of a crowd in 4 years. But the body remembers. The muscle memory was etched into her bones. She opened her eyes. She didn't look at the money. She looked directly at Julian. "You want to be entertained?" she thought. "I'll show you what a human soul looks like when it screams." The cello note held. Olivia raised her arms. The movement wasn't a waitress reaching for a tray. It was the unfolding of a wing. Her posture elongated, her ribs lifting away from her hips, her neck arching. The transformation was instantaneous. 1 second she was a servant. The next, she was a statue come to life. Julian's smirk faltered. He straightened up, his glass lowering from his lips. The beat dropped. Olivia moved. She didn't step. She glided. She launched herself into a grand jeté, soaring over the puddle of champagne and broken glass with a clearance of 3 feet. Her legs split into a perfect 180-degree line in the air. She landed on the balls of her feet, silent as a cat, just inches from the shards. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that sucked the air out of the room. She didn't stop. She spun into a chaotic, rapid-fire series of chain-A turns, her hair whipping around her like a dark halo. She was a whirlwind of precision and rage, Every movement was sharp, aggressive, and technically flawless. She wasn't dancing a pretty waltz. She was dancing a war. She moved toward Julian. She didn't back down. She danced at him. She threw her body into a deep arabesque, her leg extending high behind her, her face inches from his. She held the pose, balancing on one leg, her body trembling with the sheer exertion of control. Julian stared into her eyes. He saw the pain there. He saw the anger. And for the first time in his life, he saw something that scared him. Raw, unfiltered truth. She broke the pose and fell to the floor. Not a mistake, but a choreographed descent. She rolled, narrowly missing a jagged stem of the champagne flute, and sprang up into a layout, her back arching so deeply it looked like it might snap. The room was electric. No one was drinking. No one was whispering. The servers had stopped serving. The billionaires had stopped posturing. Even Vanessa was silent, her mouth slightly open, watching the help move like a goddess. Olivia was burning. Her lungs burned, her legs burned, but she felt alive for the first time since her parents died. She was channeling every eviction notice, every medical bill, every rude customer, every moment of despair into the movement. She finished the routine with a pirouette en dehors. 1, 2, 3, 4 rotations. On the 5th, she stopped on a dime, facing Julian, her chest heaving, her skin glistening with sweat. She stood amidst the broken glass. She hadn't sustained a single scratch. The music faded out. Silence. Absolute, heavy silence filled the ballroom for 5 agonizing seconds. Then, a slow clap started. It wasn't Julian. It was an old man in the corner, Alexander Sterling, Vanessa's father and Julian's biggest rival. Then another person joined in. Then another. Within moments, the St. Regis ballroom erupted into thunderous applause. It wasn't polite golf claps. It was the kind of roaring ovation reserved for Broadway finales. Olivia didn't smile. She didn't bow. She kept her eyes locked on Julian Thorne. He was frozen, his face pale, the arrogance completely wiped away. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. Olivia bent down. She didn't pick up the money. She picked up the silver tray she had set aside. "Keep your money," she said, her voice ringing clear in the sudden quiet as the applause died down to confused murmurs. "My talent is not for sale to men like you." She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving $25,000 on the floor and a billionaire shattered in her wake. The heavy service doors of the St. Regis swung shut behind Olivia, cutting off the applause, the music, and the scent of expensive perfume. She was back in the service corridor, a world of fluorescent lights, scuffed linoleum, and the smell of industrial sanitizer. The adrenaline that had powered her through the performance vanished instantly, leaving her trembling. Her legs, which had just supported impossible leaps, felt like jelly. She leaned against the cold concrete wall, gasping for air, her chest heaving. "Vance!" The shout echoed down the hallway. It was Mr. Henderson, the staffing manager from Prestige Staffing. He was a short, red-faced man who treated his employees like cattle. He came storming toward her, his clipboard clutched like a weapon. "What in God's name do you think you're doing?" Henderson screamed, spit flying from his lips. "I send you out there to serve champagne, not to put on a damn burlesque show for the clients." Olivia pushed herself off the wall. "He dared me. He humiliated me." "He is a billionaire," Henderson roared. "He can do whatever he wants. You just cost this agency our contract with the St. Regis. Do you understand that? You're done. Fired. Get out." "But my pay—" "You want pay?" Henderson laughed, a cruel, barking sound. "You broke a crystal flute. You caused a scene. You're lucky I don't sue you for damages. Get your things and get out before I call security." Olivia didn't fight. She didn't have the energy. She walked to the lockers, her hands shaking so badly she could barely turn the dial on her combination lock. She pulled out her worn-out winter coat and her street shoes, battered sneakers that had seen better days. She shoved her uniform into the bin and slammed the locker shut. She walked out the back exit into the biting New York November wind. The cold hit her sweat-dampened skin like a physical blow. She walked 2 blocks before her legs gave out. She collapsed onto a bench at a bus stop on Fifth Avenue, burying her face in her hands. The reality of what she had just done crashed down on her. I left the money. $25,000. It was sitting right there on the floor. She had walked away from it to save her pride. But pride wouldn't pay for Leo's lung surgery. Pride wouldn't keep the ventilators running. Stupid, 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 she sobbed into her hands, rocking back and forth. She had chosen a moment of dramatic victory over her brother's life. The image of Leo's pale face, the tubes in his nose, the way he tried to smile when she visited, so she wouldn't worry. It tore her apart. She checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Dr. Aris at Mount Sinai. Her stomach dropped. Doctors didn't call 3 times at 10 p.m. unless it was bad. Meanwhile, back in the ballroom, the atmosphere had shifted from a party to a wake. The music had restarted, but the energy was gone. Julian Thorne was still standing in the center of the room. The circle of people had widened, giving him space, but he didn't notice them. He was staring at the spot where Olivia had vanished. The stack of money, $25,000, still lay on the floor in a messy pile. "Julian," Vanessa said, tugging on his arm, her voice shrill with annoyance. "Stop staring. She's gone. Just a dramatic little nobody trying to get 15 minutes of fame. Let's go to the VIP lounge." Julian turned to look at Vanessa. For the first time, he really saw her. He saw the vacuous look in her eyes, the cruelty in the set of her mouth. She looked like a plastic doll, pretty, expensive, and completely hollow. "Go home, Vanessa," Julian said quietly. "What?" Vanessa blinked. "But the after-party." "I said go home." Julian's voice was ice. "We're done." Vanessa's face turned a blotchy red. "You're dumping me. Here? Because of a waitress?" "I'm dumping you because you're boring," Julian lied. He wasn't bored, he was shaken. "And because you lack depth." Vanessa stormed off, causing another scene, but Julian didn't care. He signaled to his head of security, a massive man named Marcus, who had been watching from the shadows. "Sir?" Marcus stepped up. "Pick up the money," Julian said. Marcus nodded, unbothered, and began gathering the bills. "And Marcus," Julian added, his eyes narrowing as he looked at the service door. "Find out who she is. I want a name, an address, and a background check. Tonight. The agency usually protects privacy, sir." "Buy the agency if you have to," Julian snapped. "Just find her." Julian walked out of the ballroom, ignoring the whispers. He felt a strange sensation in his chest, a tightness he hadn't felt in years. He told himself it was anger. He told himself he wanted to find her to punish her for the public embarrassment. But deep down, he knew it was something else. She had looked at him with total loathing, yet she had danced with a passion that made his own life feel grey and static. He needed to know why a woman with talent like that was serving drinks to ungrateful snobs. He needed to solve the puzzle of the girl in the black flats. It took Marcus less than an hour to get the file. Julian was sitting in the back of his Maybach, watching the city blur by, when his phone buzzed. "Go ahead," Julian answered. "Her name is Olivia Vance," Marcus's voice came through the speakers. "Age 23. Currently residing in a walk-up in Queens. You were right about the talent, sir. She was a prodigy." Julian swirled the whiskey in his travel tumbler. "Was?" "She attended Juilliard on a full scholarship. focus on contemporary ballet. Critics called her the next Makarova. She was slated to join the American Ballet Theatre as a soloist straight out of school. That's unheard of. What happened? Julian asked. Drugs? Injury? Tragedy, Marcus said. 5 years ago, a drunk driver T-boned her family's car on the I-95. Mother and father died on impact. Olivia survived with minor injuries. Her younger brother Leo survived but was in critical condition for months. Julian went still. The image of the girl's defiant eyes flashed in his mind. The brother? Julian asked. Leo Vance, age 17. He has cystic fibrosis. The accident compromised his lungs severely. He's been in and out of the hospital for the last 5 years. Olivia dropped out of Juilliard 2 months before graduation to take care of him and handle the estate. But there was no money. The parents had massive debt. She sold the house, the car, everything. Julian felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He looked down at his hand, the hand that had thrown money at her feet. Where is she now? Julian asked. She's not at her apartment, Marcus said. I tracked her phone. She's at Mount Sinai Hospital, respiratory ward. Turn the car around, Julian ordered the driver. Sir? The driver asked. You have a board meeting at 8:00 a.m. I said turn the car around, Julian shouted, losing his composure. Take me to Mount Sinai. Olivia sat in the plastic chair next to Leo's bed. The only light came from the glowing monitors and the street lamps outside the window. Leo was asleep, an oxygen mask covering most of his face. He looked so small, so fragile. His chest rose and fell with a terrifying, rattling wheeze. Dr. Orris stood by the door, holding a clipboard. He looked exhausted. I'm sorry, Olivia, Dr. Orris said softly. His oxygen levels are crashing. The current medication isn't working anymore. His lungs are filling with fluid faster than we can drain it. The experimental trial, Olivia whispered, not taking her eyes off her brother. The one in Switzerland. You said if we could get the deposit. We need to transfer him within 48 hours, Dr. Orris said. The specialized transport and the admission deposit. It's $20,000 up front. The total treatment is more, but that gets him in the door and saves his life. Olivia closed her eyes. 20,000. She had had 25,000 at her feet. She had danced for it. She had earned it. And she had left it because Julian Thorne had wounded her pride. I killed him, she thought. My pride is going to kill my brother. I'll get it, Olivia said, her voice sounding hollow. Give me until tomorrow morning. Please, doctor, don't give his spot away. Olivia, you've been saying this for weeks. The window is closing. Tomorrow morning, she snapped, then softened. Please. Dr. Aris sighed. Noon. If the funds aren't cleared by noon, I have to offer the bed to the next patient at the registry. He left the room. Olivia grabbed Leo's hand. It was cold. She brought it to her lips and kissed his knuckles. I'm sorry, Leo. I'm so sorry. I'll fix it, I promise. She stood up. She had to do something. She would sell a kidney. She would beg. She would go back to the St. Regis and dig through the trash if she had to. She turned to leave the room and froze. Standing in the doorway, filling the frame with his broad shoulders and dark coat, was Julian Thorne. Olivia stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. You. Julian didn't look like the arrogant billionaire from the gala. His tie was undone, his hair was wind-blown, and his face was pale. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking past her, at the boy in the bed. He took in the machines, the monitors, the sound of the struggling breath. Get out, Olivia hissed, stepping between Julian and Leo like a lioness protecting her cub. Her voice was a low growl. You don't get to be here. You don't get to see him. Julian looked at her, For the first time, Olivia saw something in his eyes that wasn't mockery. It was horror. "Olivia," he said. It was the first time he had used her name. "I said get out!" She raised her voice, tears streaming down her face. "Haven't you done enough? You got me fired. I have no job. I have nothing. Are you here to laugh at us? To see the entertainment's dying brother?" "No," Julian said. He took a step forward. "Stay back." She grabbed a heavy glass vase of withered flowers from the bedside table and held it up like a weapon. "If you come near him, I swear to God, I will kill you." Julian stopped. He held up his hands, palms open. "Surrender." "I didn't know," Julian said, his voice rough. "I didn't know about him." "Why would you?" Olivia spat. "To you, I'm just heavy feet. I'm just a prop." "You left the money," Julian said. "I don't want your money." "Yes, you do," Julian said. He reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out the stack of bills, the same stack held together by the silver clip. "You need this. For him." Olivia stared at the money. Her resolve crumbled. She looked at the cash, then back at Leo. She started to shake. The vase slipped from her fingers and crashed to the floor, water and glass exploding everywhere. She fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. The fight drained out of her, replaced by pure, unadulterated exhaustion. Julian moved then. He didn't hesitate. He crossed the room, stepping over the broken glass just as she had done hours before. He knelt down in front of her. He didn't touch her. He just placed the stack of money on the floor between them. "Take it," he said. "I can't," she choked out. "Not from you. Not after what you said." "Then don't take it as charity," Julian said intensely. "Take it as payment." Olivia looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Payment for what?" "For the lesson," Julian said. He looked at Leo, then back at her. "I have spent my entire life thinking everyone has a price, thinking everyone is beneath me. Tonight, you terrified me. You showed me that the human spirit can't be bought. That is a lesson worth $25,000. He pushed the money toward her. "Save him," Julian whispered. "And then, if you ever want to dance again, you come find me. Not as a servant, but as an equal." Olivia looked at the money. She reached out, her hand trembling, and grasped the cold cash. It felt heavy. It felt like life. "Thank you," she whispered. Julian stood up. He looked at the boy one last time, then adjusted his coat. The mask of the billionaire CEO slid back into place, but it didn't fit quite as well as it used to. "Noon," Julian said, referencing the deadline he had overheard. "This covers the deposit. I'll have the transport jet ready at Teterboro Airport by 10:10 a.m. Olivia's head snapped up. "What?" "My private jet," Julian said casually, as if offering a ride to the subway. "Commercial flights are too risky for his lungs. My medical team will handle the transfer to Switzerland." "Why?" Olivia asked, stunned. "Why are you doing this?" Julian paused at the door. He didn't look back. "Because," he said, his voice low, "you were the first person in 10 years who didn't look at my wallet. You looked at me, and you found me wanting. I intend to change that." He walked out into the hallway, leaving Olivia kneeling in the water and glass, clutching the money to her chest as the heart monitor beeped a steady rhythm of hope. But as Julian walked down the hospital corridor, he pulled out his phone. He saw a news alert. Video viral. Mystery waitress humiliates Julian Thorne at charity gala. Someone had filmed it. The dance. The rejection. It had 5 million views already. And then a text message popped up on his screen. It was from Alexander Sterling, his business rival and Vanessa's father. "Saw the video. She's magnificent. I'm going to find her before you do." She deserves a stage, not a cage. Stay away from her, Julian. She's mine. Julian gripped the phone until his knuckles turned white. The game wasn't over. It had just begun. For 3 weeks, the world hunted for Olivia Vance. The video, titled The Waitress and the Wolf, had surpassed 80 million views. It was everywhere. TikTok dancers were recreating her choreography in their living rooms. Op-eds were written about class warfare and the dignity of the working artist. Major ballet companies from London to Moscow were issuing press releases begging the mystery ballerina to audition. But Olivia was a ghost. High in the Swiss Alps, in a pristine clinic overlooking Lake Geneva, Olivia sat by a window, watching snow fall on the pines. The air here was crisp and clean, unlike the smog of New York. "He's breathing on his own, Olivia," Dr. Weber said, checking the monitors. "The treatment is aggressive, but he's responding beautifully. His lung capacity is up 15%. Leo was sitting up in bed, looking more like a teenager and less like a patient. He was scrolling through an iPad Julian had provided. "Elle," Leo said, his voice raspy but stronger. "You have to look at this. You're trending. You're bigger than the Super Bowl." Olivia took the iPad. She saw the headlines. Who is she? The girl who said no to Thorne. Billionaire Alexander Sterling offers $1 million contract to mystery dancer. She felt a wave of nausea. "I don't care about them, Leo. I'm here for you." "You can't hide forever," Leo said gently. "Mr. Thorne, he calls every day to check on me. He never asks to speak to you. He just asks if you're eating, if you're okay." Olivia looked at the phone on the bedside table. Julian had kept his word. The private jet, the best doctors, the privacy. He had handled it all with a terrifying efficiency, and he had kept his distance. No demands, no strings, just a silent, powerful protection. Back in New York, however, the silence was deafening. Julian Thorne sat in his office on the 80th floor, staring at the city skyline. His reputation had taken a hit. The internet painted him as the villain, the arrogant prince who tried to buy a human being. His board of directors was nervous. Thorne Dynamics stock had dipped 2%. "Sir," Marcus entered the room. "Alexander Sterling is escalating." Julian swiveled his chair. "What has he done now?" "He's rented the Metropolitan Opera House for a single night in December," Marcus said, placing a glossy flyer on the desk. "He's calling it the Gala of the Century. And he's publicly challenged you. He went on CNN this morning." Julian grabbed the remote and turned on the wall-mounted screen. There was Alexander Sterling, silver-haired, charismatic, and shark-like. "Julian Thorne is a man who breaks things," Sterling told the anchor, smiling smoothly. "He broke that poor girl's trust. He tried to break her spirit. I am a patron of the arts. I build things. If Miss Vance is watching, Olivia, come to me. I don't want to buy you. I want to give you the Metropolitan Opera House. One night. Center stage. Full creative control. Show the world who you really are. And let's show Julian Thorne what real class looks like." Julian turned off the TV. The remote cracked in his hand. "He's using her," Julian growled. "He doesn't care about her talent. He wants to humiliate me by stealing the woman who rejected me." "It's a good offer, sir," Marcus noted cautiously. "The Met. Principal billing. It's what she wanted before the accident." Julian stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Get the jet ready, Marcus." "We're going to Switzerland?" "No," Julian said. "She's coming back today. Leo was cleared for travel this morning. I'm going to the airport. I'm not going to let Sterling sink his claws into her before she even steps off the tarmac." The Gulfstream G650 touched down at Teterboro Airport under the cover of a grey, rainy afternoon. Olivia helped Leo down the stairs. The cold New York air felt different now. It felt charged. A black SUV was waiting on the tarmac, but as they reached the bottom of the stairs, a fleet of cars swarmed the runway. 4 black Cadillacs screeched to a halt, blocking the exit. "What is this?" Olivia gripped Leo's arm. The doors of the lead Cadillac opened. Alexander Sterling stepped out, flanked by assistants holding umbrellas and a camera crew. "Olivia!" Sterling called out, his arms spread wide. "Welcome home, my dear." Olivia froze. How did he know we were landing? Behind her, at the top of the jet stairs, Julian appeared. He looked furious. He stormed down the steps, moving past Olivia to confront the older billionaire. "This is a private airfield, Sterling," Julian shouted over the rain. "Get your circus out of here." "The airwaves are public, Julian," Sterling smirked, "and the lady is a free agent. I'm just here to make a business proposal." Sterling pushed past Julian and stopped in front of Olivia. He didn't look at her cheap clothes or her tired face. He looked at her like she was a winning lottery ticket. "Olivia," Sterling said, his voice dripping with charm. "I'm Alexander Sterling. I know what Julian did to you. Disgusting. I'm here to offer you the opposite. I have the Met booked for December 20th. I want you to be the soloist, the Firebird. It will be the debut of the decade. $1 million, and a permanent contract with the New York City Ballet." Olivia stared at him. It was the dream, the exact dream she had cried over losing 5 years ago. She looked at Julian. He was standing in the rain, his hair soaked, watching her. He didn't offer her $1 million. He didn't offer her fame. He looked like he wanted to punch Sterling, but he held his tongue. He was waiting for her to choose. "Leo needs rest," Olivia said quietly. "Of course." Sterling snapped his fingers. "My driver will take your brother to the best recovery suite in the city, on me. You come with me to the studio. We have costumes to fit. Press to meet." "No," Olivia said. The smile froze on Sterling's face. "Excuse me?" "I said no," Olivia said, her voice stronger. "I'm not a prop for Julian, and I'm not a trophy for you. You don't want a dancer, Mr. Sterling. You want a weapon to use against him." She pointed at Julian. "I'm not playing your game." She grabbed Leo's hand. "We're taking a taxi." "Olivia," Julian stepped forward. "Let me at least drive you home. No strings. Sterling has alerted the paparazzi. The main terminal is swarming with them. You'll be mobbed." Olivia looked at the chain-link fence at the edge of the airport. Sure enough, flashes were going off. The world was waiting. She looked at Julian. He looked tired. He looked sincere. "Okay," she said. "But just a ride." Julian nodded. He opened the door to his SUV. He didn't look at Sterling as they drove away, leaving the older billionaire standing in the rain, fuming. Inside the car, the silence was thick. "You turned down the Met," Julian said, after a long moment. "I turned down a man who thinks he can own me," Olivia replied, staring out the window. "I'm done with men who think their checkbooks make them gods." "I deserve that," Julian said. "But Sterling was right about one thing. You belong on a stage, not serving drinks." "I can't dance right now, Julian. I have to find a job. I have to pay you back." "Pay me back?" Julian laughed, a genuine, incredulous sound. "Olivia, the hospital bills, the jet, it's chump change. Consider it an apology." "I pay my debts," Olivia said stubbornly. "I kept a tally. 142,000. I will pay you back every cent." Julian looked at her. The profile of her face was etched with a hardness that shouldn't belong to a 23-year-old. She was made of steel, and he was hopelessly, completely captivating by her. "Then work for me," Julian said. Olivia turned to him. "Doing what? Dancing on your table?" "No," Julian said. "My foundation runs a scholarship program for the arts. It's neglected. It needs a director, someone who knows what real talent looks like and knows the struggle of having zero resources. The salary is $150,000 a year. Olivia narrowed her eyes. You're inventing a job to give me money. The job exists, Julian lied smoothly. The previous director quit yesterday. I need someone. You can pay me back from your salary if it makes your pride feel better. But take the job. Leo needs stability. You need health insurance. Olivia bit her lip. He was right. She couldn't go back to catering. She was too famous, and she was too broke. Strictly business, Olivia said. I am your employee. Nothing else. Strictly business, Julian agreed. But as the car pulled up to the modest apartment building Julian had rented for her, under the guise of corporate housing, neither of them believed it. The chemistry in the car was suffocating. As Olivia got out, Julian rolled down the window. Olivia! She turned. Sterling won't stop, Julian warned. He's a narcissist. You denied him. He's going to try to destroy you now. Let him try, Olivia said. I've survived worse than a rich man's ego. She walked into the building. Julian watched her go. He picked up his phone. Marcus, he said, by the building she just walked into. Put security in the lobby 24/7, and get me everything dirt you have on Alexander Sterling. We're going to war. The next morning, the headlines changed. The Waitress rejects Sterling. Olivia Vance, hired by Thorne Dynamics. The public loved it. It was a Cinderella story with a modern twist. But Alexander Sterling wasn't reading the papers. He was sitting in his office, looking at a surveillance photo of Leo Vance. She has a weak spot, Sterling whispered to Vanessa, who was filing her nails on the sofa. If she won't dance for me, I'll make sure she never dances for anyone else. What are you going to do, Daddy? Vanessa asked. I'm going to ruin the one thing she cares about. Sterling smiled. I'm going to acquire the medical company that makes the boy's medication. And then, we'll see how much she's willing to negotiate. The blow came 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning that had started perfectly. Olivia was settling into her office at the Thorne Foundation. She was good at this. She had organized a grant program for inner-city dance schools in days, applying the same discipline she used in ballet to bureaucracy. Julian stopped by occasionally, always professional, but with a lingering gaze that made her heart race. Then her phone rang. It was the pharmacy. Miss Vance, we have a problem with Leo's refill. Is it the insurance? Olivia asked, typing on her computer. I have the new card right here. No, Mum. It's the manufacturer. Vextra Pharma was acquired yesterday by Sterling Industries. They've halted production of the CF4 compound for re-evaluation, and they've raised the price of existing stock by 6,000%. A monthly dose is now $50,000. Olivia dropped the phone. The room spun. Sterling. She didn't cry this time. She grabbed her coat and marched to the elevator, bypassing security, and stormed into Julian's executive suite on the top floor. Julian was in a meeting with his board. He looked up, surprised, as Olivia burst in. He bought the drug, Olivia said, her voice shaking with rage. Sterling, he bought Vextra. He's holding Leo's lungs for ransom. Julian's face went dark. He stood up. Everyone out. Now. The board members scrambled. Tell me, Julian demanded. Olivia explained. He sent a message through his assistant. He says the price hike is unfortunate market volatility, but he's willing to create a compassionate care exception for Leo if I sign the contract for the Met Gala and issue a public apology to him. Julian slammed his fist onto the mahogany desk. He's a monster. I have to do it, Olivia said, her shoulders slumping. I can't let Leo die, Julian. I have to dance for him. No, Julian said firmly. If you sign that, He owns you. He'll make you his puppet. We fight this. How? He owns the patent. He owns the patent, Julian said, his eyes narrowing. But he doesn't own the past. He walked around the desk and took Olivia's hands. Think back, Olivia. The night of the gala. The St. Regis. You were serving him. You were invisible, right? Yes. Sterling is arrogant. He doesn't lower his voice for staff because he doesn't think they're human. Did you hear anything? Anything at all? Olivia closed her eyes. She went back to that night. The smell of expensive cologne, the clinking of glasses. She remembered hovering behind Sterling's booth while he spoke to a man with a thick grey moustache, Senator Paris. The zoning for the Hudson Yards project is a nightmare, Alexander, the senator had said. Not if the environmental report disappears, Sterling had replied, laughing. I wired the consulting fee to your Cayman account this morning. The wetlands are clear. Olivia's eyes snapped open. The Hudson Yards project. He bribed Senator Paris. I heard him mention a Cayman account. Julian's eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. Senator Paris just approved that zoning yesterday. If we can prove Sterling paid him off. It's my word against his, Olivia said. I'm just a waitress. You're not just a waitress, Julian smiled, pulling out his laptop. You're the key. I have the time stamps of the wire transfers. I just didn't know who they were for. With your testimony connecting the specific time and the specific conversation, we have probable cause for a subpoena. Julian typed furiously. I'm going to call the district attorney, but we need to buy time. We need to distract him so he doesn't destroy the evidence before the FBI gets there. I'll distract him, Olivia said, a cold resolve settling over her. How? He wants me at his gala. I'll go. I'll give him the show of a lifetime. The gala of the century at the Metropolitan Opera House was an exercise in excess. Red carpets, gold leaf, and every camera in New York City. Alexander Sterling stood on the grand staircase, basking in the flashbulbs. He had won. He had broken the girl, and in doing so, he had beaten Julian Thorne. The lights dimmed. The conductor raised his baton. Ladies and gentlemen, Sterling's voice boomed over the speakers. I present to you the jewel I polished myself, Olivia Vance. The curtain rose. But the music wasn't the Firebird. It was silence. Olivia walked onto the stage. She wasn't wearing the gaudy, diamond-encrusted tutu Sterling had commissioned. She was wearing a simple, white slip dress, barefoot. Her hair was loose. She walked to the center of the stage. A single spotlight hit her. She held a microphone. The audience murmured. This wasn't the script. Alexander Sterling told me that art has a price. Olivia's voice echoed through the massive hall. She looked tiny on the huge stage, but her voice was iron. He tried to buy my dignity. Then he tried to buy my brother's life. In the VIP box, Sterling jumped up. Cut the mic. Drop the curtain. But the stage crew didn't move. Julian Thorne had bought the theater staff an hour ago. He thinks he is untouchable, Olivia continued. He thinks that because he has billions, he can poison our rivers and bribe our senators and choke sick children for leverage. Behind her, the massive backdrop screen flickered to life. It wasn't scenery. It was a bank statement. A collective gasp ripped through the audience. It was a clear record of a $5 million transfer from Sterling Industries to Senator Paris, dated the night of the St. Regis Gala. Sterling's face went white. He scrambled for the exit, but 2 FBI agents were already waiting at the door of his box. But he forgot one thing, Olivia said, her eyes finding Julian in the front row. You can't buy the truth, and you can't stop the dance. She dropped the microphone. The silence returned. And then, Olivia moved. She didn't dance for Sterling. She didn't dance for money. She danced for the sheer, unbridled joy of freedom. She moved to the music in her own head, a lyrical, contemporary piece that was raw, messy, and beautiful. She spun until she was dizzy. She leaped until she felt like she was flying. It was an exorcism of pain. When she finished, collapsed on the floor in a pile of white silk, the opera house didn't just clap. They wept. They stood on their feet and roared. Julian vaulted onto the stage. He didn't care about the cameras. He didn't care about the board. He ran to her and pulled her up. "You did it," he whispered into her hair. They arrested him. "It's over." Olivia looked at him, breathless, sweat dripping down her face. "Leo? Vextra is under federal investigation. The assets are frozen. The state is taking over distribution. Leo gets his meds tomorrow, free of charge." Olivia laughed, a sound that turned into a sob. She buried her face in Julian's chest. Julian lifted her chin. "I owe you a paycheck, Miss Vance. That was quite a performance." "Keep the money," Olivia smiled, pulling him closer. "I think I'd rather have the boss." Julian kissed her. It was a kiss that made the front page of every newspaper in the country, right next to the mug shot of Alexander Sterling. 6 months later. The Thorne Vance Center for the Arts opened in Queens. It was a state-of-the-art facility offering free tuition to underprivileged kids. In the back of the studio, Leo sat on a bench, breathing easily without a mask, sketching in a notebook. He looked healthy, happy. Olivia stood at the bar, correcting the posture of a 7-year-old girl who was wearing shoes that were 2 sizes too big. "Chin up," Olivia said gently. "Pride, always." The door opened. Julian walked in. He had traded his suits for a cashmere sweater and jeans. He looked younger, lighter. "Ready for lunch?" he asked. "Almost," Olivia said. She turned to her class. "All right, 5 minutes break." She walked over to Julian. He handed her a water bottle and kissed her forehead. "Sterling got 15 years, Julian said softly. The verdict just came in. Olivia looked out the window at the New York skyline. It didn't look like a fortress of enemies anymore. It looked like a city of possibilities. "Good," she said. She took Julian's hand and interlaced their fingers. "Now let's go. I'm starving and you're buying." "I'm always buying," Julian laughed. "Yeah," Olivia smirked. "But now you know the value of what you're paying for." They walked out into the sunlight together, leaving the heavy feet and the broken glass far behind them. And that is the story of Olivia Vance, the waitress who brought down a billionaire empire without saying a word. It reminds us that dignity has no price tag, and sometimes the people we overlook are the ones with the most power. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, romance, and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. What would you have done if you were in Olivia's shoes? Would you have taken the money? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.